And welcome to another episode of Two Guys on Politics. I'm Ray Hanania.
I'm Bill Lipinski.
And this is season 2, episode 2. We got a great program for you. We are going to be talking about obviously in the news this week, the third indictment of former President Donald Trump. And his supporters say it's political. His opponents say it's criminal conduct that needs to be prosecuted. And I guess we can talk about what impact that's going to have and compare it to the Hunter Biden investigation and the Biden family, if we want. And then we're going to end up talking about a guy who wants to be president. We didn't mention him in the last show, right, Bill? But we'll talk about him a little bit this time and some of the things he's doing. Illinois Governor and really wealthy governor, I should add, Governor J.B. Pritzker. So, Bill, let's talk about what happened with Trump this week. This is the third indictment?
Yes, it's the third indictment, Ray. And I personally think this is the most serious of all three indictments. Now, I want to say something right off the top over here.
Sure.
I don't like Donald Trump. I've never voted for Donald Trump. I never will vote for Donald Trump. I think he's a despicable, horrible character. But there are things that I am going to say today that may lead people to believe,
right.
I'm a closet Trumper. It's not true.
And I'm going to say the same thing as you. I don't know. I may vote for President Trump, not because he's such a great person, but because I can't support Joe Biden. I think if it comes down to Trump and Biden, I'm just going to be honest and say that I can't continue to support Biden because I don't think he's followed through. And if Trump is the alternative, then I'm going to go for disruption again, for another 4 years of disruption. But, this is kind of funny that we have to say that because our country's so polarized, right? So if you say anything that sounds like it's criticism of the critics of Trump, they want to say you're pro-Trump. And that's not necessarily true. I agree with you. I think the guy was a pathetic leader. He had some good ideas. I don't think he did a good job as president. And I think we're in some of our problems today because of the failed manner in which he ran his administration.
Well, I would agree with that. I think he did do a number of very good things. I wish that he was a different person, but he's not. But now he's been indicted for the third time.
Now, do you think do you think that these are serious indictments? I mean, I know they're serious, but do you think the charges are substantive that they've made, in your opinion?
Well, I think that the case that they're bringing against him is a very serious case, and I think the repercussions for Trump will be enormous. I think that if he is found guilty, there's a very strong possibility that he will be put in jail. And hopefully, as far as I'm concerned, that will end his political career. But this here case seems to me to be a case that is not being prosecuted in the correct manner. There is really nothing in the indictment that talks about the 6th of January. Okay.
Right.
Well, I
That's
believe
the crime. That it doesn't talk about the crime.
Not according to this indictment. Okay. This indictment says he entered into a conspiracy.
Right.
Okay. And a conspiracy is 2 or more people to convince the American people and the powers to be, whoever that is, that his election was stolen by the Democratic Biden forces. Right. And he should be able to continue to stay into power. Now, I've heard a lot of people talk about this indictment since it came down. I believe, based upon what I have seen people say on TV, heard on the radio, I've read in various publications, including the New York Times for that matter. Fortunately, I also read the Wall Street Journal. But what they are charging him with is conspiracy, okay, to do what I said that he was going to do. Now, it can't, and it's because he knew it was wrong, that he had lost the election. He shouldn't have kept saying that, he didn't lose the election. But he was advised by a number of people around him, probably all those co-conspirators that have not been named, but everybody seems to know who they are, that he did win the election, and he should continue, to fight to save his presidency. Now, the prosecutor is going to say, well, here's 25 lawyers that you spoke to, and they all told you lost the election. Your attorney general told you that you lost the election, Bill Barr, but you continue to spread this lie, which you knew was a lie. And he comes back and says, well, I got these 6 guys over here, or 7 guys, or 10 guys who told me I was right, that I should continue to pursue it. That being the case, how do you find him guilty? And what do you find him guilty of?
I agree with you, and I just would elaborate that that this indictment, this third one, I think the first one and the second one were political. I think this third one is purely political. I don't think a crime was actually committed. They talk about crimes. Like you said, there was some conspiracy, but when you read through the indictment, I don't see evidence of a conspiracy. What I see evidence of was that he had an opinion that he won, and he had an opinion that the election was stolen from him. And some people fed that opinion. Some people opposed that opinion. I didn't know that in America, having an opinion that people agreed with or disagreed with was a federal felony offense that could put you in jail for 20 years. Now, he may have been stupid. He may have had the poor judgment. His opinion may be completely wrong, but I don't believe that's a crime. But what they did do was they threw in things like these opinions fueled the Capitol riot on January 6th, which is a crime. They never proved that he orchestrated that riot, the violence at the riot. He clearly was motivated to push people to protest. I heard his remarks. He said, be peaceful. He said, let's go there and show people what we believe. I haven't seen one piece of evidence that said he told people, shoot people, destroy property, take over the government, and eliminate the people that don't agree with us. He certainly made an argument that he felt that the vice president wasn't being strong enough to defend his presidency. That was his opinion again. And just because he said you should do something, it was public, is that a crime? I don't hear the crime. And I think that if he is convicted, it'll be a political conviction. And I think it'll be easily overturned. And it could go on forever. But the most important thing I think about this whole thing is that this persecution of Donald Trump, who is not a likable person, in my opinion, is martyring him. They've taken the focus off of the despicable aspects of President Trump, and they've focused it for his supporters on the despicable aspect of the far left and the despicable conduct and really unethical conduct of the mainstream news media that is fueling all of this. And just because the media says he's guilty and his political opponents say he's guilty, I think that he's going to get more votes because of this, and I think he'll get elected, and then he'll pardon himself, which I think he can do. There'll be a debate, but
you may think he can do it, but the United States Supreme Court has never ruled on that. So the question is up in the air.
Well, that's true, but that's the point, right? They've never ruled on it. That doesn't mean he can't do it.
Oh, no,
that doesn't mean that it would be wrong. I think he would do it, and then it'll go into a constitutional battle as to whether a president could pardon himself. He can pardon everybody else. Why can't he pardon himself?
It'll go to the Supreme Court. and the Supreme Court will have to make the decision. Now, right away, the left is going to say, well, 6, Republican appointees, naturally they're going to rule in his favor. But I don't think that's the case. I think these people are much more objective than they're being given credit for. But
well,
let me go back.
Isn't that, and just to point out that, isn't that what Republicans are saying about this U.S. attorney who unleashed this third indictment, that he's a purely political, appointee of the Obamas and, an ally of the Clintons and a Democrat? And this, they're making the same argument. Why is their argument bad, but the Democratic argument that the Supreme Court is biased seems to hold water? It just doesn't seem fair to me.
Well, that's because the news media agrees with the Democrats in regards to this issue. Okay, but let me get back to the Trump situation.
Go ahead.
If you were going to indict President Trump on this January 6th conspiracy lying, you should have, as far as I am concerned, you should have gone into the January 6th riot, insurrection, march, whatever you want to call it, okay? And you should have tried to come up with evidence that he incited them to go and be violent, do violence at the Capitol,
right?
Okay,
right.
Because this is as much a political trial,
right,
as it is, a legal trial.
Right.
Now, the vast majority of the Trump supporters, all they know is that he's being persecuted. This is the third time he's been indicted. And what has he been indicted for? Believing that he won the election and trying to convince other people that he won the election. He's being persecuted because of that. Now, if the prosecution, had tried to really connect him up with the riot and I'll call it a riot, on
right.
January 6th, where several people were killed, I think that could have done him much more harm legally and politically. But they chose not to do that. Now, I don't know why. Yep. I'm sure they'll say it's because it's so difficult to do. Well, then they shouldn't have brought the indictment in the first place.
Yeah, don't you have to say that, they make the argument that he instigated the riot, which resulted in violence. Now, when I look at the riot, the January 6th riots, there were riots that took place on January 6th. They've arrested 1,000 people. They've charged 1,000 people, maybe about 5% with serious crimes and another 95% with misdemeanors that I think have been a little exaggerated. But let's just assume that 1,000 were terrible. There were 30,000 other people who didn't turn to violence, who were at the protest. There were 30,000 other people that followed the law. There were 30,000 people who were outside, and some say it's more, some say it's less. But where is the connection between the man being charged with the insurrection and the worst people who committed the insurrections? Their only argument that I hear from the media and the Democrats is, well, his lie motivated them to break the law. And I'm thinking, wow, is that so? Someone's lie, I can be held accountable because I believe something that someone else calls a lie, and someone else decides to use it to commit an act of violence. Am I responsible for the guy who commits an act of violence because he thinks that what I said was beyond what I said was justification to be violent? I never told him to be violent. Trump never said to be violent. If they had one piece of paper, one email, one text message, one person who said, President Trump called me and said, I want those people to be violent. Let's use violence. Let's hurt people. Let's destroy property. I'd say, you know what? He's guilty and he's going to go to jail. But I don't think that exists.
But he did say, you must be strong if you're not going to lose your country. Let us march to the Capitol and take our country back.
And didn't he also say that let's do it peaceful in the very same speech? Let's be peaceful. Let's not turn to violence. He used those words in his speech. So the Democrats and the media pick and choose his words and say, oh, this justifies it. But you take the entire context of his speech, and I'm going to tell you that was political hyperbole at its most extreme. But I don't think that's a prosecutable offense until today's world, where opinion has become the basis for a prosecution. And I think that's Big Brother. I think that's undemocratic. And I think the Democrats are destroying this country. And I think this prosecution of Trump is taking a person who should not be president, and they're going to make him president.
Well, unfortunately, I'm going to sort of segue a little bit away from Trump at the present time. I'd like to bring up the fact that he's being tried in Washington, D.C. Now, do you know what percentage of the votes he got in Washington, D.C.?
It was probably very small, because
less than 10%.
Which is
now,
probably what the Republican vote represents in Washington, D.C., right? It's mostly a Democratic area.
You think you're going to be able to find, 12 independent, neutral people to serve on a jury in Washington, D.C.? I have great concerns about that. Number two, the judge, okay? This judge has been the hardest judge on sentencing people who were involved in the January 6th demonstration. She has, on several different occasions, gone above and beyond what was recommended as a penalty by the prosecution to sentence the individual either to a higher fine or to spend more time, in jail. Now, I think that based upon what the jury pool will be, and based upon the previous record of this judge, who was appointed by President Obama, just so we make it clear, it's not a Trump appointee. I think that they should move, first of all, for a change of venue and for a change of the judge. Because once again, this is not only a legal trial, it's a political trial. And if you go forward in Washington, D.C. with this judge, the Trumpers are going to say right off the bat, well, we can't possibly win. It's fixed against us. It'll just divide this country even more.
Well, I agree. I agree with that, of course. And I also, this idea that the prosecutor is saying in this indictment that he wants a speedy trial, that they say a speedy trial, let's get this over with. Of course, they want a speedy trial because, one, they haven't presented any evidence to the defendant. The defendant is only now learning about the ridiculous claims that are being made. Sure, you want a speedy trial, so the defense has no basis to respond to the accusations. That's not what our justice system is about. The defense should have the right to look at every piece of evidence that these politically motivated prosecutors from the Obama administration have thrown on Trump. And they should have a right to respond to it. They should see everything. It can't be a kangaroo court. Let's just hang them. Why? Let's have a trial. Let's do it really fast. Let's tar and feather them. Of course they want to do that because they don't want people to see how weak this case is. And I think it exposes, I think in the end, it's going to take a while. And I think as this goes on, I think that outside of the rhetoric, the Democrats are going to be hurt by this. I think the Democrats are going to lose votes. I think Democrats are going to look more political than Trump. They're going to make Trump look good. And instead of looking at Trump for his failings, his problems, we're not going to look at that. We're going to look at the bias that's being directed against him, and he's going to benefit from that, I think. And I think it's going to hurt this country. But do I blame Trump? No. I blame the prosecutor. I blame Obama. I blame the system that is being manipulated to get what they want to impact politics. I think that's the big hypocrisy that really should be showcased. But you and I, besides us, there are only a few other people are talking like that. But I think the election is going to show a completely different impact than what Democrats believe is going to happen as a result of this.
Why do you say Obama and not Biden?
Well, because I think this is Obama's prosecutor. First of all, I don't believe Biden is running his administration. I honestly believe that Biden's administration is being run by the, if I use the word deep state, they're going to say, well, that's a Trump term. I think the Biden administration is being run by the system in Washington, D.C. that was left by the Obamas and the Clintons, and even George Bush. These are lifetime, lifers in a political system who have views and political opinions. They didn't like Trump, an outsider, and it made it easier for them to gang up on him. And I think that Obama, through that system, and Clinton, through that system, are pulling the strings. I just don't believe when I see Biden on TV that there's a clarity in his mind about what's happening. And as much as I like Biden, I thought he was a great vice president. I thought in many cases, I thought he was very smart. I think he's lost that edge. And I think that whatever he's doing is being put in front of him, and he's merely mimicking and repeating what he's being told. So I don't believe it's really Biden.
I believe that the Biden administration is being run by liberal, progressive Democrats. Now, I don't know that they're out of the Clinton operation or out of the Obama operation, but there is no question in my mind that they are liberal, progressive Democrats. And I don't think that Joe is that much in touch with his own administration. I concur with you on that. I want to go back to a minute when you were talking about the trial. I'm not a lawyer, but from everything I've been reading about this, one thing is I understand that really the defense is really the one that will, allow the trial to be slowed down or speeded up, because the defense can come up with so many different motions. It will be very easy for this defense, if they choose to do so, to drag this trial out to where it will be going on, just before the November election next year.
It could even, listen, we've seen political cases go on for years. And because of, I think, especially when the evidence is weak, I think you can drag things on for a long time. And I think this whole case, all three of these indictments, could go beyond the election. I think that it could go beyond November of 2024, I believe, correct? This coming year.
Absolutely.
And I think that he might actually be president. I think as a consequence of all this, I may be wrong, but if he is president, I think that turns this whole country upside down. We're going to be worse off today than we ever were, not just because of Trump, but because of what's being done today to distort, our judicial system. But you're right. I mean, it's the defense. They have a right to defend themselves.
Absolutely.
And they have a right to challenge everything. And there's a whole process. And he has lawyers. Now, I understand, I read someplace that he's spending a lot of money. I don't think he's going to have a problem raising money given what the Democrats have done to him. I think that his supporters are going to rally.
This is the third indictment. The first indictment, I think, was nothing but a political indictment, totally and completely. The one about the documents, I guess I could go either way on that. I really don't see what the big deal is of him taking some documents. Okay, now, if he was showing them around to people who had questionable security clearances, that's a different story, okay? But other than that, I'm wishy-washy on that second one too. This third indictment, I was hoping would really be ironclad, hooking him up with the peaceful demonstration on January 6th and Trump. That hasn't happened. They didn't even go in that direction. So I wouldn't be surprised if he winds up, winning all four of these indictments, and that will catapult him once again into the White House, I believe.
And I think, the media has been saying, oh, their only defense is they're picking on Trump, but they're ignoring Hunter Biden and they're ignoring Hillary Clinton. They have really taken minuscule evidence, and I'm not even sure there's any evidence, and turned it into federal criminal cases. And then when it involved Trump, but when it involved Hillary Clinton, her role in Benghazi, her leadership, her decisions, what it involved Hillary Clinton and her emails, secret emails and secret documents that were on her personal server, when it involved Hillary Clinton and Whitewater. They went out of their way to defend her and block her and undermine any attempt. In Trump's case, I agree with you. I said, okay, so he had these documents. Maybe he didn't handle them, responding properly in a hostile environment. I don't think that anybody could handle this in a proper way. I don't think that he contacted the Russians and said, hey, here's a secret document that I think would hurt my country. And they don't have any evidence.
He did nothing like that, I'm sure.
Right, but isn't that the crime that they're trying to say? But there's no evidence that he did that. What about this?
The crime is that a grand jury subpoena was issued to him to turn all the documents back. And once again, he proceeded to say he had turned all the documents back. And of course, they found documents later on that he hadn't turned back. And now they put up a couple of guys that work for him who supposedly, were hiding documents at his direction. Once again, they have to prove what was in his mind. Okay, I mean,
and what were those?
Go ahead.
They have to prove. They have to prove what were those documents. They have to prove. Okay, to me, is that a federal offense for 20 years in prison? I'm saying, okay, maybe it's a misdemeanor, and you want to charge him with that. Go ahead. You have a better case making that case, but they've expanded it from that. They're not looking at just those few. They're trying to make this sound like he had secret documents and he exposed the United States secrets to unknown foreign elements. The one thing I've learned about the past 6 years is that the Clinton-driven dossier, which claimed that Trump had a secret relationship with the Russians, this Russian dossier was fabricated, it was fake, it was never true, it was treated for years as if it were factual, and it was only recently, over the last 2 years, that people admitted that it was fake and it was a political document that was faked up by the Clintons or the Obamas or whoever. They're still riding on the fumes of those lies with all of this.
Well, I don't want to go back to Hillary Clinton. I didn't vote for Hillary Clinton. I would never vote for Hillary Clinton, but let's move on. I think we've covered
I think Trump so too.
Very, very extensively here. What do you think of the situation that has developed recently with the congressional hearing on Hunter Biden and Joe Biden and this guy that was Hunter's business partner testifying before this congressional committee, which is run, by the Republicans? I would just want to make sure we get that out there.
Well, it seemed like the prosecutor was willing to give this Hunter Biden a pass, and they only focused on the period of activity that was between when his father left the vice presidency and when he became president. I have the suspicion that there is a conspiracy not to look when he was vice president, and not to look now that Biden is president. And I think that people don't overnight do these things, that if he did these things between the vice presidency and the presidency, if Hunter Biden was using his clout, wouldn't he certainly have used his father's clout when he was vice president? It just makes common sense. So I think that they tried to get this, brush it under the rug, make it a misdemeanor case. If anything, deserves to be a felony, prosecution. I think this Hunter Biden stuff should be investigated more, and I think there's far more to it than what we're being told. And I think there's more substance to it. But it did collapse, and now maybe it'll open up more. This agreement did collapse, so we'll see where that goes.
Well, I'll talk about the collapsing. First of all, it's the Republican committee that is gaining this information, and it is a prosecutor that has a long history of being a Republican. So just keep that in mind. the Republican Congressional Committee that had hearings on this and got testimony from Hunter Biden's former partner, all they could come up with, I don't know why, but all they could come up with was the period between the time Joe was vice president and the time he became president. And in that, you know, I don't really know, you know, certainly Joe Biden's name carries some influence with people. There is no question about that. But I don't know how much influence it may have had, but it was there. But that's not against the law, particularly, you know, when the man is not in office. I don't believe that Joe Biden has received any money from any of these deals whatsoever. If he has, no one has proven it as of yet. So until the Republicans can have a hearing and get a witness that expands this time when Joe was vice president and when he became president, and come up with some evidence where he was then talking to some of these clients of Hunter's, you know, I just don't see where there's too much there. Now, as far as the collapse, I don't know how this ever went as far as it did. When they came out with the, you know, the agreement between the prosecution and the defense, that Hunter Biden was going to get, you know,
probation.
Probation, and the gun charge was going to go away. And his attorney said this also allowed him exemption from any future crimes that they were investigating him on.
Right.
Now, the prosecution, this is, you know, the day that it came out, prosecution says, no, that's not true. That's not true. Then nothing is said whatsoever about it.
Right.
They go to court. The judge, you know, says, how do you reconcile this? Both the prosecution and the defense says, well, you know, we don't have anything like that. And she then pertains to show them what is in the agreement. And it says that he would be exempt from any future prosecution for things he was being investigated for right now. And you know, that's ridiculous. But how could the prosecution fail to see that? And did they fail to see that? Or were they just looking the other way to get the whole thing over with? That's what gets me.
Well, let's just, my final thought on this is that who investigated this? This was the Biden Justice Department that investigated it. Now, the Republicans had their own investigators. The Republicans sought their own evidence. There's a lot of evidence that hasn't been brought up. His whole laptop computer that he dropped off at a computer store to get repaired that he forgot about because he was in a drug-induced, you know, period of his life and didn't remember it. And after it was there 3 months, the computer store automatically took control of it legally because it was abandoned, and then turned it over to Republicans who went in depth into what was on that laptop, which suggests that he often had his father, the vice president, on the phone after he negotiated business in Ukraine and in China, and then his father, either in after the negotiations or the next day, would have a conversation with the same people. Now, why hasn't any of that come up? They've been blocking this story for 6 years. And now they thought they had a little way to wrap it up and tie it up and get past it so that it wouldn't come back and bite Biden. I'm not convinced that this Justice Department did a real and proper investigation of this case.
But Ray, the attorney that has been leading the investigation on the part of the government is a lifelong Republican.
There are Republicans that don't like Trump, and there are Republicans that are like Democrats. And I don't know what his political views are just because he has a label.
They are right. Yes, it would probably be difficult to find a prosecutor who does like Trump, but you know, maybe you could.
I don't know.
That's a very good point. I understand that. Bill Barr, his attorney general, who I thought served him very well, was on a program last night. And he said, you know, he is such a selfish individual that he leaves nothing but destruction in his wake, and he should
Yes.
never be allowed to be near the White House again.
And that's a good opinion on Bill Barr's case.
Yes,
And it's probably
respect Bill
justified.
Barr. Yeah.
But it doesn't constitute criminal action.
No,
Bill
it does
Barr didn't say that he violated any laws. Bill Barr
No.
didn't say that this guy deserves to be put in jail. But yeah, did Bill Barr say he was disgusted with this guy?
Yes.
Yeah, he did. And you know what? There are a lot of us. I didn't vote for Trump when he first ran. I voted against Hillary Clinton. Once I saw Trump in office, I said, oh, this guy is just a big headache. He doesn't know what to do. But now that I'm looking at Biden, and I got to tell you, if it's Biden Trump in November of 2024, I'm not going to vote for Biden. That doesn't mean I want to vote for Trump, but is that the alternative? We do have one other alternative. We've talked about two in our last show, right?
No labels.
You talked about no labels and
Yes,
hope and the
absolutely.
possibility Senator Manchin might become a candidate for them. We also
Correct.
talked about Robert F. Kennedy running as a Democrat against Biden. But there's another guy that a lot of people believe is orchestrating candidacy for himself for presidency, our governor in Illinois, J.B. Pritzker, who has the money and the political clout. And this past week, I think you pointed out in the Wall Street Journal, there was a story about how he gave 35,000 state union workers a 19% pay raise.
Yes, that's absolutely. I think it's 19.26% pay raise. Now that's the lowest level state employee. Those that were with the state longer, who were making more money, got an appreciable larger percentage increase.
That's 35,000 public workers for the next 4 years, which if I were one of those, where I'd say, JB, you want to be president? You have my vote. And that's what I think this is all about. I think this is to give himself some strength.
For this coming year, there is no increase in their health care premium. In the second year, there's a 10% increase, or excuse me, a $10 a month increase. And in the third and fourth year, there's an $8 a month increase in their health care. Now, that probably means that the taxpayers of the state of Illinois will have to significantly, pay for the health care for these 35,000 state employees.
A lot of them are, I'm sorry, go ahead, Bill.
The principal problem with this is that we have collective bargaining in governmental employees. I've always been for unions. I've supported them strongly when I was in college, in Congress, but I never supported the collective bargaining for unions, in government, because I'm sitting on one side of the table here, and I know that there's a lot of those union people, who have worked for me and helped me out. And you're sitting on the other side of the table and you represent those union employees. So I say, well, listen, yeah, you people definitely deserve a raise. There is no question about that. So I say, here, go ahead and take a raise. Okay, you say, oh, thank you very, very much. We certainly appreciate it. You go to your meeting, okay, with the union, and you says, Governor Bill, he just gave us this great pay raise. I'd like to see each and every one of you put $25 into this election fund to reelect that great governor, Bill Lipinski.
Right.
They're already representing the taxpayers anymore. Okay.
Right.
Once upon a time, the governmental people represented the taxpayers. That's not the case anymore.
I think this is purely a political move on Governor Pritzker. AFSCME is a Democratic union, and they're big voters, and this is just going to reinforce their support of him. And I know, aren't they changing the presidential primary system? Iowa isn't the first state. I don't know where Illinois stands now in, the process anymore as to which state goes first. But with that backing, he could win Illinois over Biden if he were to run for president.
I don't know. I don't believe he's going to run against Biden, though. I think that if Biden decides not to run, or if Biden stumbles in the early primaries, I think he will shoot right in there and become a candidate. But the first Democratic primary is South Carolina. And Biden did very well in South Carolina before. I'm sure he'll do very well once again. The good friend of mine who I served with in Congress, whose name was escaping me at the present time, but he used to be the third ranking guy. He's still there. He's the big political boss in South Carolina for the Democrats. I'm sure he'll deliver South Carolina once again for Joe. So I don't think Joe is going to voluntarily step down. He may have to if he has problems campaigning in the various primaries.
Yeah, I think you're right. So Pritzker is just playing the odds just in case. And worst case scenario, it just gives him another 4 years as governor of Illinois.
Yeah, and
Bill,
then he'll still be in a position to run for president. He's young enough. He waits another 4 years, then he can run for president.
I don't think it's his age that's important. His money is, there's no depth. There's no bottom to the amount of money that he has. And he could run an election for president without even taking one donation, I think. And he could put up a pretty strong campaign and pay for everything nationally. So he definitely is moving towards. Yeah, he's definitely doing that. All right, Bill, I think we pretty much went through all of this. Any final thoughts?
My final thought, Ray, is that our country, the United States of America, is in great trouble nowadays. I never believed when I was young and living on Avers Avenue in Chicago, we could ever come to this. I remember when people respected all the institutions that served the people, when the people respected the President of the United States. I remember Franklin Roosevelt being the president. I remember Harry Truman. Republicans politically could not stand either one of those two guys, but they had a great deal of respect for them because they were both presidents of the United States. I hope and pray that somehow we can get back to that in this country before we really go down the drain. That's my closing thoughts.
It would be great if Democrats looked at the presidency and say, hey, this guy is an outsider who came in. We should try to help him to focus on what he wants to do. And, even maybe convince him that his personal stooping to personal levels when he attacks people personally, that's not good for the country. There was a way to do that. I don't think they pursued that common sense, I care about this country approach. I think what they did was they hated him so much, they decided to throw the gauntlet down, and that's where we are today. Biden's big failure, though, in my opinion, was he said he was going to bring the country together. He could have, but I don't think the people who are running his government want him to do that. Maybe I think deep down he would like to, but they're not going to allow him to do that. All right, I'm Ray Hanania.
I'm Bill Lipinski, and until next time, a fellow American.
And we will be back next week with another episode of Two Guys on Politics. Thank you all for listening. We'll talk to you again.